Alright, today we're going to talk about different inspections and methods to inspect the head and some of the different parts. What you'll do first is we'll go ahead and you'll check for cracks. You'll want to look at a lot of the stress points, especially where your bolts go in. And you just want to do a good look over, check for any obvious cracks. Quick visual. We have another head here so we can show you the bottom, what it would look like in general. You'll check for cracks along all of your openings and galleries. Different methods that perhaps a machine shop would use would be it would use specific penetrating oil and what's called developing. They'll put it on and the liquid would flow and it would go into the crack. Another method they would use would be metal shavings and a magnet. If you have aluminum heads, then they're not going to be magnetic, so what would happen is you would put the metal shavings on, they would put an electromagnet on it, activate the magnet, and then the metal shavings would fall into the cracks. That would be a couple of different methods to identify cracks. Another thing you would check for would be warpage. You would do that with a straight edge. Take the straight edge, and depending on the size of your head and the methods used, there are a number of different places that you would measure. You would place your straight edge and you would take a feeler gauge and check and see how much of a gap between that straight edge and the different points on your head, how big that gap is. You definitely do the same thing along the bottom. You would go on both sides, of course along the top and the bottom, across the middle, and you would get your measurement to see if you have any head warpage on your head. Another measurement you would take, we have one cam in so you can see what it would look like, how it would sit, and we have another cam out so we can show that the cam journals inside here where you have your caps and your head. You take a split ball gauge, put that inside, open it up, and then you take that gauge out and measure it. You use your micrometer here to measure how far that gauge opened up so that you can see how far the openings are for your cams. Alright, another thing we would want to do is with our motor, we have what's called flat tappets. One thing you want to do once you get those removed, you can use the magnet to remove those. You would want to check those for cracks and warpage as well. Inside, under the tappet, you can see that there's the retainer. We've got the retainer. Just along here, you see two half moon shapes. Those are going to be your retainers, your keepers. And you have your valve. What you could do is take a socket, put it along the retainer, and you would tap the socket just to make sure that your keepers don't pop out. Sometimes you may have to do that to get them loose if you have an excessive amount of corrosion. Another thing you want to measure once you have your springs and valves out is you want to measure the height of your valve. Make sure that it hasn't been stretched, which would cause necking, which at the stress points it would have a really narrow part that's out of specs and would be much narrower than the rest of the stem. Along the edge of your valve, if you can see it right here, it's going to be your margin, and you want to measure there. That's going to sit inside this groove here in your head. You want to measure your seat and make sure that it's within spec, and make sure that your margin hasn't been flattened out. You want to take a look when you're removing your stem. Your valve stem is going to slide out through the guide. If it encounters any resistance, especially around the tip, has any burrs on it, you can take a file and file that down. Another measurement you want to take is going to be with your spring. You're going to want to measure what's called the free height, where you'll measure the height of your spring using your micrometer. Check that against your specs to make sure your spring hasn't lost any of its force. You want to measure and make sure that your spring's not bent in any way. You want to measure its squareness. You want to make sure it's on a nice flat surface, and you're going to want to measure across. You're going to want to measure both sides and the distance between the coils of your spring. That's going to help you determine whether the spring still has its squareness to apply the correct force that it needs. Alright, while you're removing all of your springs and retainers and keepers, you're going to want to keep everything in a nice order so that you know exactly where they came out of. especially your tappets and this type of motor. You don't want to keep all of that in a good order. And as you take everything out, you want to inspect for the same things pretty much. You want to inspect for your cracks, obvious bends. You're also on the valve stem, you're going to want to measure the taper here because it is going to taper off. You're going to make sure that's within specs as well. Next thing we're going to take a look at is going to be our cam. What we want to measure is going to be your cam lobe lift. You're going to take a measurement here across the cam, and you're going to take a measurement here across the, you're going to take a measurement across the lobe and across the cam, and you'll see exactly how much space you've got between the difference in the two, to where once your cam rotates down, that lobe's going to press down on the tappet, which is going to press down on the retainer, and it's going to press, it's going to grab your key, the retainer has your keepers, and it's going to press your valve down and open that up. You're also going to want to measure, you don't want to make sure that you've got your cam rotated to where your lobe is facing up. You're going to want to take a feeler gauge and measure the gap in between your lobe and your tappet. And you don't want that too thick or too thin. It's got a different specific tolerance. If that's too thick, then your valves are going to open up to more than they should. And if it's too thin, then they're not going to open up the right amount either to let the correct amount of air into the combustion chamber. After that, once you get everything installed and you're ready to put everything back together, you're going to get your cams installed and torque down the spec, and you're going to spin them. You're going to get your dial indicator set up here on the end, and what you'll want to do is rotate those, and it's going to check where your dial indicator will move here and here, and you're going to want to check for the roundness of your cam to make sure it's not become out of shape. You also want to get your gauge set up and check your end plate, and that's going to measure your forward and back movement to make sure that your cam's sitting in secure like it should be.